Hey guys, tonight we're rewinding the clock, way back. Forget your comfy mattress and electric blankets for a moment. Imagine, instead, the profound, almost suffocating darkness of a night tens of thousands of years ago. No city glow on the horizon, no reassuring hum of appliances. Just you, huddled close to the flickering, fragile heart of a campfire somewhere in the vast, whispering wilderness of Ice Age Europe. The cold nips at your exposed skin, even through the heavy furs you're wrapped in. Every rustle in the surrounding blackness a snapping twig, the hoot of an owl, the distant, mournful howl that raises the hairs on your neck feels intensely personal. It's a world where the boundaries between you, the animals out there, and the unseen spirits believed to inhabit everything, the wind, the trees, the very rocks, are blurry, permeable. Survival isn't guaranteed, frankly. Armed with just a flint-tipped spear and primal instincts, you might not make it past the first chapter of this story. So, before you get too comfortable in your own safe little nest, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, your support means the world. And hey, drop a comment below. Where in the world are you listening from right now, and what's the time? It's always cool to feel that global campfire vibe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. The fire crackles, casting long, dancing shadows on the faces around you. You can smell wood smoke, damp earth, the musky scent of cured hides, and maybe something roasting on the coals, hopefully mammoth, not your annoying cousin who wandered too far from the firelight. The air thrums with a low chant, rhythmic and hypnotic, led by the figure seated opposite you. This is the shaman. Not a ruler, perhaps, but a vital bridge. Their eyes, reflecting the flames, seem to look through you, into the darkness beyond. They speak of the spirits of the hunt, of the great beasts that roam the land. And among these spirits, one predator holds a particular fascination, a potent mix of fear and respect, the wolf. You feel the weight of that respect. Out there, wolves are formidable competitors and deadly threats. They move with eerie coordination, silent and efficient. Their howls aren't just noise, they're a language slicing through the night, mapping territory, coordinating the pack. To your ancestors, witnessing this power, this complex social structure mirrored in their own small bands, it was impossible not to see something more. Something almost supernatural. The wolf wasn't just an animal, it embodied raw power, cunning, fierce loyalty to the pack, and an unnerving intimacy with the night, that realm of spirits, dreams, and the unknown where the sun held no sway. This primal awe is where our story truly begins, deep in the fertile soil of animism, the belief that everything, possesses a spirit or life force. Rocks, rivers, storms, and especially animals, held power and wisdom humans desperately needed to access or appease. The shaman's role to navigate this spirit world. And one of their most profound abilities, whispered about with reverence and maybe a touch of healthy fear, was transformation. Not physically sprouting fur and fangs, at least, not in the literal sense we'll later grapple with, but a journey of the spirit. Through drumming that mimicked a heartbeat galloping into the spirit realm, through chants that wove spells of focus, perhaps aided by the potent fumes of certain sacred plants smoldering in the fire, the shaman sought to shed their human consciousness. Their spirit would soar, run, become an eagle to see far, a bear for strength, or a wolf. To walk with the wolf spirit, to see through its eyes, to understand its secrets of the hunt, its navigation of the dark, its connection to the lunar cycles. This was coveted knowledge, a dangerous communion granting power and insight vital for the tribe's survival. Mainstream history nugget: This deep-rooted animism and the resulting practices of early shamanism are considered foundational to countless indigenous belief systems worldwide. The archaeological record, though sparse, hints at its antiquity. Think of those stunning cave paintings in Lascaux or Chauvet depictions of animals imbued with power, often overlapping with human handprints or hybrid figures. This isn't just art, it's a profound testament to a worldview where humans and animals shared a spiritual landscape, their boundaries fluid in the realm of spirit and symbol. Weird little tidbit: ever wonder about the origins of the werewolf's supposed vulnerability to silver? It might have roots way older than medieval superstitions. Some anthropologists speculate it could be a faint, distorted echo of ancient metallurgy's rise. Copper and bronze were known, powerful, magical metals used for tools and ornaments. Silver, rarer and trickier to work with, emerged later. Its cold, bright, almost unnatural sheen, its ability to tarnish and dye, might have imbued it with an otherworldly, purifying quality in the minds of people deeply connected to older animistic beliefs. Could silver have been seen as a potent counter to powerful, potentially dangerous animal spirits long before it became the werewolf's kryptonite? The thread is thin, but fascinating to tug on. Scholars still scratch their heads, while evidence points to shamanic practices being ancient. How ancient and how widespread specific wolf transformation rituals were is hotly debated. Was it a core part of widespread Paleolithic shamanism, or did it develop more prominently in specific regions and times, later influencing others? The lack of written records from this deep past means we're piecing together fragments: cave art, burial practices like finding wolf teeth or claws as grave goods, ethnographic parallels with modern indigenous groups, but the complete picture remains tantalizingly out of reach. Historians and anthropologists are still very much huddled around their own metaphorical campfires, debating the embers of evidence. You shift on the hard ground, pulling your fur cloak tighter. The shaman's chant reaches a crescendo, then falls silent. Their head lolls forward for a moment before snapping up, eyes wide, unfocused, gazing into the fire as if seeing landscapes invisible to you. A shiver runs through the group. You feel it too, a sense of presence, of something vast and ancient brushing against the edge of the firelight. The boundary feels thinner. The howl that echoes again, seemingly closer this time, doesn't just sound like a warning from the woods. It feels like a greeting, or a challenge, from the spirit world itself. The connection has been made. The seed of the wolf within the human soul, born of awe and necessity, has been planted deep in the fertile darkness of our shared past. Its roots are about to spread, twist, and grow into shapes we're only beginning to understand. The silence after the shaman's chant hangs heavy, thick with anticipation. That last, chilling howl seems to vibrate in your bones. Then, a new sound begins, low and insistent: thump, thump thump, thump, thump thump. It's the shaman, hand now gripping a simple frame drum covered in stretched hide. The rhythm isn't random, it's a pulse, a heartbeat echoing faster and faster, mimicking the frantic gallop of a deer, the loping stride of a wolf, or maybe the very thrum of the earth itself. You feel it resonate in your own chest cavity, sinking your breath, pulling your focus away from the biting cold and the oppressive darkness beyond the firelight. Your eyes are glued to the shaman. Their body sways subtly with the beat, their gaze fixed on the flames, or perhaps through them, into another layer of reality only they can perceive. This, right here, is the threshold. Tonight, you're not just an observer huddled in the cold, you're stepping into the shoes or bare feet of a young apprentice, about to witness the core of the shaman's power, the journey of transformation. The drumming intensifies, a relentless wave washing over you. It's hypnotic, pulling your thoughts under its current. You watch the shaman's breathing deepen, then change sharp inhales, long, shuddering exhales. They might start to chant again, but the words are guttural, unfamiliar, less human language and more the raw sounds of the wild: a low growl, a sharp bark, a keening whine. The firelight seems to dance differently on their face. Shadows deepen around their eyes, their features momentarily losing sharpness, becoming fluid, almost animalistic. It's unsettling, deeply fascinating. You're not seeing fur sprout or fangs elongate, though your imagination might flirt with the idea in the flickering gloom. What you're witnessing is a profound shift in presence. The calm, focused mediator of an hour ago seems to recede, replaced by something wilder, more primal. Their eyes, reflecting the fire, hold a different kind of awareness: fierce, alert, untamed. They are becoming wolf, not in body, but in spirit. How is this possible? How does one shed their human skin, even just mentally? The shaman's toolkit for this astral projection is both sophisticated and primal. The drum is paramount. That repetitive, driving rhythm isn't just for atmosphere, it's a neurological hack. Think of it as the world's first, most organic binaural beat generator. It alters brainwave patterns, guiding consciousness away from the alert, analytical beta state down into the dreamy, receptive theta state, the realm of deep meditation, hypnosis, and vivid dreams. It's a bridge to the subconscious, where the boundaries between self and other, human and animal, dissolve. Chanting and controlled breathing hyperoxygenate the blood, further altering perception and inducing trance. And then there's the controversial part, the one scholars debate fiercely, the potential use of allies from the plant kingdom. Mainstream history nugget: the use of psychoactive substances in shamanic rituals is well documented across diverse cultures globally, from the Amazonian ayahuasca brewers to Siberian shamans using the toxic fly agaric mushroom Amanita muscaria. Ethnobotanical studies confirm many of these plants contain compounds like muscimol and fly agaric, or DMT in ayahuasca, that profoundly alter perception, induce visions, and create powerful feelings of ego dissolution or merging with other entities including animals. While evidence for specific plant use in ancient European shamanism is circumstantial, no recipe books survive. Pollen analysis from ritual sites and anthropological parallels make it a strong, widely accepted possibility. It wasn't about getting high, it was a sacred technology for accessing the spirit world. Weird little tidbit: okay, the fly agaric mushroom, the classic red cap with white spots, straight out of a fairy tale. Its effects are bizarre. Initial nausea and disorientation are common, followed by distortions in size and space. You might feel gigantic or tiny, vivid waking dreams, and crucially, a profound sense of connection to animals or even becoming one. Here's the truly weird part: it's fat-soluble, not water-soluble. Consuming it directly is risky. Some Siberian traditions involved the shaman consuming the mushroom, then others drinking their urine to experience a purified, less toxic version of the effects. Talk about dedication to the craft and maybe a strong stomach. While the direct link to ancient European wolf shamans is speculative, the mushroom's known effects and its presence in northern European forests fuel the intriguing possibility. Scholars still scratch their heads. The big debate isn't if altered states were used, but what the shaman and the community genuinely believed was happening. Did the shaman truly experience an out-of-body journey, merging with the wolf spirit, or was it a sophisticated form of ritual theater, a deeply symbolic performance designed to channel collective fears and desires, to heal, to divine? The future: was the transformation perceived as literal spiritual travel, or a potent metaphor enacted through trance? The line between profound subjective experience and culturally sanctioned performance is incredibly blurry, and historians, anthropologists, and neuroscientists are still wrestling with it. Did the shaman believe they were a wolf in spirit, or were they masterfully embodying the concept for the tribe's benefit back to the fire? The drumming reaches a fever pitch, a frantic staccato. The shaman's movements become jerky, unpredictable. They might throw back their head and let out a sound that isn't quite human, a guttural snarl, a high-pitched yip. You shrink back instinctively, even though you know intellectually it's still the shaman. The feeling is different. The air crackles with a wild energy, you feel a prickle on your skin, a sense that something immense and ancient is now sharing the space inside the shaman's form. They seem to sniff the air, their head turning with uncanny alertness, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the fire with a predator's intensity. They are hunting, but not for deer or rabbits. They are seeking knowledge, tracking the movements of spirits, scouting the unseen landscape for threats or opportunities for the tribe. They are navigating the world through the senses and instincts of the wolf. The transformation, whether viewed as spiritual voyage or profound embodiment, is complete. The human vessel pulses with the wild heart of the pack leader. And in that shared, charged space around the fire, you feel the first, primal stirring of the concept that will echo down millennia, the human, wearing the wolf within. The drumming finally ceases, the last reverberations dying away like the final echoes of a retreating thunderstorm. Silence crashes back in, heavier than before. The shaman slumps forward, breathing ragged, sweat glistening on their brow even in the chill night air. That fierce, wild presence that had momentarily inhabited the space around them, the wolf spirit, feels like it's receding, pulling back into the vast, unseen tapestry of the world beyond the fire. Slowly, shakily, the shaman lifts their head. Their eyes, though weary, hold a clarity that wasn't there before the journey. They might murmur insights gleaned from the spirit hunt, warnings of approaching storms, the location of migrating herds, a sense of unease from the west. The tribe listens, rapt. The knowledge feels charged, vital, a direct line to the powers that govern their precarious existence. As the tension eases, someone from the inner circle, perhaps an elder, perhaps the shaman themselves, reaches into the shadows behind them and retrieves something bulky, heavy with meaning. It's a pelt. Not just any pelt. Even in the flickering firelight, you recognize the thick, coarse guard hairs, the gray-brown underfur. It's the hide of a wolf, meticulously prepared, the head still attached, the empty eye sockets staring blindly into the fire. The shaman rises, movements still carrying an echo of the animal grace you witnessed moments ago. With solemn ceremony, they lift the heavy pelt and drape it over their shoulders. The wolf's head settles over their own, its muzzle pointing skyward. Suddenly, the transformation you felt spiritually moments ago gains a terrifyingly tangible dimension. The shaman stands before you, human form swallowed by the silhouette of the predator. It's not magic in the Hollywood sense, you don't see claws erupt or jaws snap. But the symbol is overwhelming. The boundary blurs completely. The shaman is the conduit, and now, they wear the mantle. You're past the pelt. Your turn to feel its weight, its texture. It's surprisingly heavy, stiff with age and ritual treatment. The fur is coarse against your palms, carrying the faint, primal scent of the animal and the smoke used to cure it. Running your fingers over the cold leather underside, you feel the power imbued within it. This isn't just a disguise for hunting deer, though it might serve that practical purpose too. This pelt is a battery, a transmitter, a suit of spiritual armor. Wearing it isn't about pretending to be a wolf physically, it's about harnessing its essence, its power. It signals to the tribe, the shaman walks with the wolf spirit. Pay attention. It signals to the spirit world, I am marked. I am allied. Grant me passage, grant me insight. And crucially, it signals to the wolves out there in the dark, or to the spirits of those wolves, I respect your power. I carry your form. Do not turn your teeth upon us. Mainstream history nugget: the ritual use of animal skins, particularly powerful predators like wolves, bears, and big cats, is one of the most tangible archaeological links we have to ancient shamanic practices worldwide. Findings in burial sites across Europe and northern Asia, dating back thousands of years, frequently include wolf teeth pendants, claws, and sometimes entire pelts or headdresses accompanying individuals believed to be ritual specialists or high-status figures. The famous shaman of Bad Dürrenberg burial in Germany c. 7000 to 6500 BCE contained a wealth of grave goods, including animal bones and tools suggesting a ritual role, the kind of person who might have worn such a pelt. These weren't trophies, they were tools of office, conduits of power. Weird little tidbit: forget silver for a moment. One of the oldest and most widespread folk beliefs about exposing a werewolf, calling them by their baptismal name 3 times. Sounds simple, right? But think about the power embedded in that. Names held immense significance in ancient and medieval worldviews. Knowing someone's true name was believed to grant power over them. Calling a transformed being back by their human name was essentially an exorcism, a forceful reminder of their original, civilized identity, severing the connection to the wild spirit. It's a fascinating glimpse into how deeply the concept of identity, the human self versus the animal other, was woven into the fear of transformation. The pelt, in a way, was a physical manifestation of adopting a new, powerful, and dangerous name in the spirit world. Scholars still scratch their heads. While the symbolic power of the wolf pelt is clear, the extent to which wearing it was believed to confer actual physical protection or abilities is murky. Did the wearer or the tribe genuinely believe the pelt made the shaman faster, stronger, or more resistant to harm in this world during rituals, or was its power purely spiritual and symbolic, a focus for belief rather than a literal magical garment? Was it armor against physical dangers encountered on spirit journeys, or only against spiritual threats? The line between metaphorical empowerment and literal belief in physical enhancement remains a topic of lively academic debate. Did putting on the pelt feel like slipping into supernatural Kevlar, or was it more like wearing a sacred vestment? The pelt is heavy on your shoulders, the wolf's muzzle obscuring your peripheral vision, its scent filling your nostrils. You feel different. Not stronger, necessarily, but more connected to the raw pulse of the night. You understand, viscerally, why this symbol was chosen. The wolf embodies everything the tribe both feared and desperately needed: fierce protection for the pack. The tribe is your pack. Ruthless efficiency in the hunt. Survival depends on it. Unwavering loyalty vital for group cohesion, and an uncanny ability to navigate the darkness, both literal and metaphorical. Wearing its skin isn't mockery, it's the highest form of flattery and appropriation. It's claiming those traits, inviting them in, becoming a vessel for that raw, untamed power to serve the community. The pelt marks the boundary between human and beast, tribe and wilderness, safety and the terrifying unknown. By wearing it, the shaman doesn't erase the boundary, they become the living embodiment of it, a bridge woven from sinew, fur, and profound, ancient belief. As you hand the heavy pelt back, the weight lingers on your spirit, a tangible taste of the wildness that lies just beneath the skin of human society, waiting to be invoked, feared, or worn. The weight of the wolf pelt, its primal scent still clinging to your senses, fades like a dream upon waking. The crackling fire, the chanting, the deep forest shadows, they dissolve. Suddenly, the ground beneath you heaves. Not the solid earth, but the unforgiving, greasy deck of a longship. Salt spray stings your face, carried on a wind that howls like a chorus of tormented spirits. The air is thick with the smell of wet wool, brine, tar, unwashed bodies, and something else, a sharp, acrid tang of anticipation, maybe fear, maybe something far more potent. You're no longer an apprentice shaman in a forest clearing, you're a young thrall, maybe, or a wide-eyed trader, clinging to the gunwale of a dragon-proud vessel slicing through the frigid, churning waters somewhere off the coast of Norway or Denmark. The year sometime between the 8th and 11th century, the age of the Vikings. And the figure currently stomping past you, making the very planks groan, isn't draped in a shaman's pelt. He's clad in thick, coarse wool and boiled leather, but slung over his massive shoulders, held in place by a crude clasp, is a thick, shaggy pelt. Not wolf this time. Bear. Bjorn. This is a berserker. The term hits you like a physical blow. Berserker, Old Norse, berserker. Literally, bear shirt or bear skin. Later sources would also mention Lfnar wolf coats. These weren't distant shamans communing with spirits, they were the terrifying shock troops of Norse chieftains and kings, warriors who fought in a state of terrifying, trance-like fury. The man before you radiates a barely contained violence even now, before battle. His eyes, when they flick towards you, seem unnaturally bright, glazed, focused on some internal horizon. He mutters to himself, teeth grinding, fingers twitching near the hilt of the monstrous axe strapped to his back. The other warriors on the ship give him a wide berth, their glances a mix of awe and deep-seated apprehension. You feel it too, a primal urge to shrink away. This isn't the controlled, spirit-channeling power of the shaman, this feels raw, uncontrolled, dangerous, even to his own side. The longship crashes through another wave, icy water sluicing across the deck. Ahead, through the mist and driving rain, the dark outline of a coastline emerges. Shouts go up, guttural, sharp commands. This is it. Raid or battle. The berserker throws back his head and lets out a roar that drowns out the wind. It's not human. It's deep, guttural, feral. The sound seems to ignite something within him. His body tenses, muscles bunching like cords beneath his skin. The glaze in his eyes hardens into a terrifying, inhuman focus. He starts to tremble, not with cold or fear, but with a surging, volcanic energy. He rips off his helmet, discarding it with a clang. He tears at the neck of his tunic. He seems to be burning from within. Then, he begins to gnash his teeth, foam flecking the corners of his mouth. His skin might flush a deep, mottled red. He's entering the berserk's gang or the berserker rage. When the longship grinds onto the shingle beach, the berserker is the first over the side, not waiting for the plank. He hits the shallow water like a force of nature, axe already whirling. What follows is pure, distilled terror. He charges the startled defenders scrambling to form a shield wall. He doesn't weave or dodge, he crashes through them. Blows that would fell an ox seem to glance off him. He screams, howls, laughs, a horrifying cacophony. His movements are a blur of terrifying speed and impossible strength. Shields splinter, limbs are severed. He fights with no regard for his own safety, seemingly impervious to pain. You see an arrow thud into his shoulder, he barely flinches, ripping it out and hurling it back like a dart. He's not just a warrior, he's a whirlwind of destruction, a force of nature unleashed, living up to the sagas that describe them, biting their shields in fury, howling like beasts, and fighting with the strength of many men. The line between man and bear or wolf isn't just blurred, it's obliterated in the heat of battle. Mainstream history nugget: berserkers are well attested in Old Norse literature and historical accounts. The Icelandic sagas like Egil's saga or Ynglinga saga, written down later but preserving older oral traditions, feature them prominently. Even the Christian chronicler Saxo Grammaticus, writing in the 12th century, describes them with horrified fascination. They were real, elite warriors known for their ferocity and their distinctive state of battle frenzy, often associated with the god Odin, the master of ecstasy, magic, and the dead. Archaeological finds, like the intricate Torslanda plates from Sweden, depict figures in animal skins wielding weapons, possibly representing such warriors. Weird little tidbit: forget biting shields, let's talk about biting nails. One peculiar and frankly disgusting detail mentioned in some sagas is that berserkers were said to have extraordinarily long, strong fingernails, sometimes described as being like claws or talons. Why, the theory goes that in their frenzied state, if they lost their weapons, they would resort to scratching and clawing at their enemies with terrifying ferocity. Whether this was embellishment, a symptom of some underlying condition, or just a vivid way to emphasize their animalistic fury, it adds another layer of grotesque detail to their fearsome reputation. Imagine facing a frothing, armored giant trying to literally claw your eyes out. Nightmare fuel. Scholars still scratch their heads. The million-dollar question: how did they do it? What fueled the Berserksgang? The theories are contentious. Sacred fury, divine possession. The traditional view: they were initiates of Odin, entering a state of holy battle ecstasy, channeling the god's fury or the spirit of the bear-wolf itself, granting superhuman strength and immunity to pain through divine favor or magical means. Psychological conditioning: intense training, battle hypnosis, rhythmic chanting, drumming before battle, and deep cultural belief could induce a dissociative state akin to a psychotic break or extreme combat stress reaction, suppressing pain and fear. The mushroom theory: the infamous fly Agaric Amanita muscaria makes a comeback. Consuming it before battle could induce aggression, heightened strength, or the illusion of it, altered pain perception, and a sense of invincibility, symptoms that match some berserker descriptions. But its effects are unpredictable: nausea, loss of coordination, and potentially debilitating, making it a risky pre-battle cocktail. Medical conditions: could underlying neurological or psychiatric conditions like extreme bipolar mania, PTSD, or rare conditions causing hyperaggression and analgesia have been misinterpreted as a sacred state or perhaps self-induced hysteria? The debate rages. Was it sacred ecstasy, potent pharmacology, masterful mind control, undiagnosed pathology, or a terrifying cocktail of all four? Nobody knows for sure. The berserker on the beach, now standing amidst fallen foes, chest heaving, foam drying on his beard, eyes slowly losing their feral glaze, takes a shuddering breath. The fury is draining away, leaving behind profound exhaustion, maybe even confusion. The bear pelt hangs heavy and sodden with seawater and blood. The line between man and beast, channeled spirit and uncontrollable madness, remains as blurred and storm-tossed as the sea that brought him here. The echo of his roar still hangs in the air, a chilling testament to the human capacity for channeling the wild, not just for wisdom, but for war. The acrid tang of blood and seawater still clings to the back of your throat, mixing unpleasantly with the smell of wet wool and fierce sweat as you stumble onto the shore behind the rampaging berserker. The brief, brutal fight is over. The defenders are scattered or dead. The berserker himself stands like a monolith amidst the carnage, chest heaving in great, shuddering gasps. The terrifying, feral light in his eyes is slowly dimming, replaced by a profound, almost childlike exhaustion, and perhaps a flicker of confusion. He sways on his feet, the massive bear pelt now a sodden, heavy burden. The foam around his mouth has dried into a crust. His skin, flushed crimson moments ago, now looks pale, almost gray. The superhuman engine that drove him has sputtered and died, leaving behind a vessel running on fumes. As his fellow warriors cautiously approach to secure the beachhead, they give him a wider berth than ever. The awe is still there, but it's heavily laced with unease, even pity. You watch as two sturdy warriors gently but firmly guide the trembling giant away from the immediate aftermath, towards the temporary camp being set up further up the beach. The question hangs thick in the damp air, as tangible as the mist rolling in from the sea. What just happened to him? What unholy engine fueled that terrifying inferno later? Huddled near a spitting driftwood fire within the relative shelter of the captured settlement's longhouse, the atmosphere is subdued. The usual boasting and ale drinking is muted. Whispers circulate, glances dart towards the corner where the berserker now sits slumped, wrapped in a blanket, shivering violently despite the fire's warmth. He looks utterly spent, vulnerable, a stark contrast to the demigod who tore through the shield wall. An older warrior, a grizzled veteran with scars that map a lifetime of raids, catches your curious gaze. He spits into the fire. "Odin's gift," he mutters, his voice low and gravelly. The Alfather fills his chosen with the hamingja of the beast. Bear's strength. Wolf's fury. A blessing. And a curse. He taps his temple meaningfully. Not all who dance with the bear spirit return whole. Some lose pieces of themselves in the fire. The explanation is delivered with the weight of tradition, a sacred mystery. But you see the flicker of doubt in his own eyes. Was it truly Odin's divine fury or something else? The something else theories start swirling like the smoke in the longhouse. One weathered sailor leans in conspiratorially. "Heard tell from a trader down Hidebi way," he whispers, eyes darting towards the exhausted berserker. "Said some of the Lfnar further east, they chew on a certain red-capped mushroom before the fight. Makes MC enemies as monsters, feel no pain, rage like beasts." You recall the shaman's trance, the potential role of the fly agaric Amanita muscaria. Could the berserker be using a similar, but cruder, more dangerous method? The effects described: aggression, distorted perception, analgesia, lack of pain, feelings of invincibility, even the nausea and subsequent exhaustion fit uncomfortably well. But the fly agaric is notoriously unpredictable. One mushroom might induce battle fury, another might cause paralyzing cramps, debilitating vomiting, or terrifying hallucinations that turn a warrior against his own comrades. It's a volatile, dangerous gamble. Did they use a specific preparation, a controlled dose, or was it sheer, desperate recklessness? Mainstream history nugget: the fly agaric theory is arguably the most famous and controversial explanation for the Berserksgangr beyond divine fury. It gained traction in the 18th and 19th centuries and remains widely discussed in popular culture. Ethnobotanical evidence confirms its use in Siberian shamanism for inducing altered states, and its psychoactive compounds muscimol and ibotenic acid can produce effects loosely matching some saga descriptions of berserker rage, heightened aggression, distorted size perception, increased strength, or the feeling of it, analgesia, and euphoria followed by deep depression and exhaustion. Its presence in northern European forests makes it geographically plausible. Weird little tidbit: here's where it gets properly weird and gross. Remember the Siberian shamanic practice involving urine? Well, some proponents of the mushroom theory suggest berserkers might have employed a similar tactic. Why? Because the liver metabolizes ibotenic acid into muscimol, the primary psychoactive compound. More importantly, muscimol is excreted unchanged in urine. Drinking the urine of someone who consumed the mushroom could provide the psychoactive effects with significantly reduced toxicity: less nausea, vomiting, risk of fatal overdose. Imagine the pre-battle ritual: one designated feeder consumes the mushroom, then the berserker drinks their purified, potentiated urine. It's a bizarre, yet pharmacologically sound method of reducing risk and standardizing the dose. Whether it actually happened, pure speculation, but undeniably strange. Scholars still scratch their heads. The fly agaric theory, while popular, faces significant challenges. 1. Timing and logistics: the effects take 30 to 90 minutes to kick in and last for hours. Could warriors reliably time this for the chaos of a raid or battle too? Debilitating side effects, nausea, vomiting, loss of coordination, and extreme drowsiness are common effects, especially with raw consumption not ideal for wielding an axe effectively. 3. Lack of direct evidence. No saga explicitly mentions mushroom use by berserkers. Contemporary sources focus on divine fury or inherent madness. 4. Alternative explanations. Could intense psychological conditioning, rhythmic chanting, weapon beating inducing auto-hypnosis, genetic predispositions, or even undiagnosed medical conditions like PTSD or intermittent explosive disorder explain the rage? Or was it simply elite warriors working themselves into a frenzy, their feats exaggerated by fear and legend? The debate is fierce, often pitting historians against ethnobotanists. Did they trip into battle or just really work themselves up? The grizzled veteran sees your skeptical look. He shrugs. Maybe the mushroom opens the door for Odin's gift. Maybe it is the gift. Or maybe, he adds, lowering his voice further, some men are just born with a wolf gnawing at their soul, and the battle just lets it off the leash. He gestures towards the shivering berserker. Look at him. That's not the face of a man blessed. That's the face of a man broken. You look. The exhaustion is deep, etched into every line of his face. It looks less like divine afterglow and more like the crash after a terrible, self-inflicted storm. Was the fury a sacred ecstasy, a chemically induced madness, a psychological weapon, or a terrifying pathology unleashed? Perhaps it was all these things, tangled together in the heat and desperation of the Viking Age. The only certainty is the cost etched on the warrior's face in the firelight, and the chilling echo of his inhuman roar still ringing in the silent spaces of your mind. The line between sacred beast and poisoned madman remains terrifyingly thin, lost somewhere in the fog of war and the haze of ancient toxins. The mystery of the berserk's gangrene endures, as potent and unsettling as the fury itself. The grizzled veteran's words hang heavy in the smoke-filled air of the longhouse. Some men are just born with a wolf gnawing at their soul. You glance again at the slumped berserker, wrapped in his blanket, shivering not just from cold but from the profound emptiness after the storm of rage. The bear pelt lies discarded nearby, a sodden, heavy reminder of the terrifying power that briefly consumed him. But as the low murmur of conversation resumes among the warriors, another word surfaces, whispered with a different kind of reverence: Ulfnar. Wolfcoats. It's spoken by a younger warrior, his eyes alight with a fervor that isn't fear, but fierce ambition. He nods towards a figure seated near the hearth, quieter, more contained than the spent berserker, but radiating a different kind of intensity. This warrior wears no obvious pelt now, but on his weathered leather tunic, sewn with intricate care, is the stylized emblem of a snarling wolf's head. The image pulls you away from the stifling heat and lingering smell of blood in the longhouse. Suddenly, the air is bitingly cold, sharp with the scent of pine resin and deep snow. You're no longer on a conquered beach, but trekking through the dense, ancient forests of Scandinavia, perhaps Norway or Sweden, centuries earlier. The snow crunches loudly under your boots while, fur-lined wraps. Ahead, moving with an uncanny silence that makes your own footsteps seem clumsy, is a small group. They are the Ulfnar, the legendary wolfcoats. Unlike the lone, explosive fury of the berserker, these warriors move with a coordinated, predatory grace. They are a pack. You feel the difference immediately. There's no pre-battle frothing, no roaring. Their focus is absolute, honed to a razor's edge. They communicate with subtle hand signals, barely perceptible nods, a low guttural click in the throat that sounds unnervingly like a wolf's warning growl. They wear layers of gray and brown wool and leather, blending into the winter forest like ghosts. And over their shoulders, or sometimes worn as cloaks with the head pulled up like a hood, are thick wolf pelts. These aren't just symbols, they are camouflage, insulation, and a potent declaration of identity. You notice other details: amulets of carved wolf teeth hanging from necks, patterns resembling claw marks etched into leather bracers. They cultivate the wolf within, channeling it not into blind rage, but into stealth, endurance, pack cohesion, and ruthless efficiency. You fall into step beside a younger initiate, his breath pluming in the frosty air. He speaks in a low murmur, his eyes constantly scanning the snowy landscape. The Bjorn bear is a force of nature, he says, a hint of respectful distance in his tone. Powerful. Unstoppable. But the Finn. He taps the wolf head emblem on his chest. We are the shadow that moves at dusk. We are the patience that waits for days by the game trail. We are the teeth that close as one. His words aren't boastful, they are a statement of doctrine. The wolf isn't just a spirit to channel in a moment of fury, it's a model, a totem, a blueprint for how to be a warrior. They emulate the wolf's legendary stamina for long hunts and marches, its ability to coordinate silent ambushes, its fierce loyalty to the pack, their warrior band, and its chillingly efficient way of bringing down prey or enemies. The bond between these warriors is palpable, deeper than mere comradeship. They share food without question, sleep huddled together for warmth like a litter of pups, anticipate each other's movements instinctively. To betray the pack is the ultimate sin, punishable by death or, worse, exile, becoming the lone wolf, the outcast, a fate considered worse than death. Their rituals reinforce this. You learn of ceremonies held under the full moon, the wolf's time, involving chants invoking Fenrir, the monstrous wolf of Norse myth, son of Loki, both feared and respected for his inevitable role in Ragnarok or Odin's wolves, Jerry and Freaky. Initiations might involve surviving alone in the wilderness, tracking and perhaps even bonding with a real wolf pack, or enduring grueling tests of pain tolerance and silent endurance. They don't just wear the wolf skin, they strive to embody the wolf's spirit in their very being, forging themselves into a living weapon forged from cold iron and colder instinct. Mainstream history nugget: while less flamboyantly documented than the berserker, the Lfnar wolf hides or wolf coats are similarly attested in Old Norse sources like the sagas, e.g. Vatnsdæla saga, Herolskvi, and skaldic poetry. They are depicted as elite, often Odin-worshipping warriors specializing in stealth, reconnaissance, ambush, and fighting with a pack-like coordination. The term itself explicitly links them to the wolf-ulfr, distinguishing them from their bear-clad counterparts berserker. Archaeological finds of wolf tooth amulets and iconography on weapons gear support the cultural significance of the wolf as a warrior totem. Weird little tidbit: okay, the teeth thing again, but different. Beyond amulets, some sagas describe Lfnar warriors sharpening their own teeth or deliberately breaking them into points to resemble wolf fangs. Why theories abound. Psychological intimidation: bearing filed teeth mid-snarl would be terrifying, a ritualistic act of transformation, a practical last resort weapon for biting in close combat, or perhaps a symbolic act of rejecting civilized humanity and embracing the beast. Whether widespread or just gruesome storytelling, the image of warriors deliberately mutilating their teeth to mimic their totem animal adds another layer of intense, visceral commitment to the wolf identity. Imagine seeing that grin in the moonlight before an ambush. Chilling. Scholars still scratch their heads. Were the Lfnar a distinct, formal warrior society with specific rituals and hierarchies, or was it more of a loose descriptor for warriors who adopted wolf symbolism and tactics? The sagas sometimes use the term almost like a title: he was an Lfinn, suggesting a recognized role. But was there a formal initiation, strict rules, or was it simply a style of warfare adopted by certain bands who revered the wolf? The line between a dedicated cult-like brotherhood and a specialized fighting style embraced by groups who identified with the wolf totem remains frustratingly blurred. Were they the Viking equivalent of special forces, bound by sacred oaths, or just really good scouts who liked wolf pelts? The pack halts suddenly, as one. The lead warrior, an older man with eyes like chips of glacial ice, raises a fist. Silence falls, absolute. He points, a barely perceptible movement. Ahead, partially obscured by snow-laden pines, you see the faint glow of campfires, an enemy outpost, perhaps, or a rival band's hunting camp. No words are spoken. The Ulfnar melt into the surrounding trees and snowdrifts with terrifying speed and silence. You crouch beside the initiate, your own breath held. You feel the shift in the air, the collective focus tightening like a drawn bowstring. This isn't the chaotic roar of the bear, this is the silent, deadly focus of the wolf pack encircling its prey. The only sound is the sighing of the wind through the pines and the frantic pounding of your own heart. The initiate beside you bares his teeth in a silent, predatory grin that has nothing to do with amusement. The hunt is on. The line between warrior and wolf, meticulously cultivated, has dissolved completely in the service of the pack. The next sound you hear won't be a war cry, it will be the whisper of blades leaving sheaths and the first, startled gasp of surprise from the unsuspecting camp. The wolf doesn't announce itself, it simply arrives. The silent, lethal efficiency of the Ulfnar fades like smoke in the frigid air. The crunch of snow underfoot, the scent of pine, the predatory tension all dissolve. Instead, a thick, cloying scent assaults your senses: beeswax candles, damp stone, incense struggling to mask the underlying odors of mildew, old parchment, and something faintly metallic, perhaps fierce wet, or the cold iron of the heavy manacles hanging on the wall. You blink, adjusting to the dimness. Gone is the open sky, the winter forest. You're in a cramped, vaulted chamber deep within the stone walls of a monastery or perhaps a bishop's palace. The air is still, heavy with an oppressive silence broken only by the crackle of the meager fire in the hearth and the rhythmic, disapproving tap of a ringed finger on an oak table. The centuries have passed. We're somewhere in the murky depths of the early Middle Ages, maybe the 8th or 9th century. The Viking raids are a fresh, terrifying scar on the land, and the church, once a flickering light in the ruins of Rome, is consolidating its power, its gaze turning sharply towards the old ways that stubbornly cling to the fringes. You're not a warrior here. You feel small, insignificant, clad in rough homespun wool. You stand nervously before a figure seated behind the heavy table. He is tonsured, clad in the dark robes of a cleric, his face pinched with zealous fervor and an ingrained suspicion. An illuminated manuscript lies open before him, its vibrant colors depicting saints battling grotesque demons. He is not a shaman, not a warrior poet. He is an inquisitor, or at least a cleric tasked with rooting out heresy. And in his hand, held like damning evidence, is a small, crudely carved wooden figurine. It's unmistakably a man, but with exaggerated, snarling wolf-like features. This, the cleric intones, his voice low and dangerous, was found hidden beneath the floorboards of Widow Agatha's cottage. Along with these. He gestures dismissively to a small pile on the table, a bundle of dried herbs tied with red thread, a worn fragment of what might be a wolf's tooth, and a small, clay drum, echoes of a world you once knew intimately. Pagan filth, he spits. Devilry. Invocations of the beast. The accusation hangs in the air, colder than the stone walls. You understand, with a sinking feeling, what's happening. The powerful symbols you witnessed, the shaman's spirit journey, the berserker's divine fury, the Lfnar's pack loyalty, all rooted in deep reverence for the animal spirit, are being reframed through a terrifyingly different lens. To this cleric, and the institution he represents, these are not pathways to power or communion with nature, they are evidence of a pact with Satan. The wolf, once a symbol of strength, loyalty, and connection to the wild, is being systematically recast as the ultimate symbol of the devil's bestial corruption. Why the wolf? Because it's the perfect antithesis of the Christian ideal: wild, untamed, predatory, associated with darkness and the wilderness, the very opposite of the ordered, agrarian, light-filled world the Church sought to build. The bear, the raven, other potent animals, face similar demonization, but the wolf becomes the archetype. The cleric leans forward, his eyes boring into yours. You come from the northern valleys, do you not, where the old tongues are still spoken, where men whisper of Odin and Thor in the shadows? He taps the wolf man figurine. This Odin they cling to, a demon masquerading as a god. And these warriors who don the skins of beasts not chosen by their false gods, but possessed. Their fury is not divine, it's diabolical. Their transformations, he shudders theatrically. Not spiritual journeys, but literal, hellish curses. Men abandoning God's image to become ravening wolves, servants of the adversary. He slams his hand on the table, making you jump. This is the poison that weakens Christendom. This is the rot that invites God's wrath in the form of plague and famine and Viking savagery. It must be excised. Mainstream history nugget: the Christian Church's systematic campaign to demonize pre-Christian European beliefs and practices is a well-documented historical process. Canons issued by church councils like the Synod of Ancyra in the 4th century, though focusing on broader heresy, and later penitential manuals for priests increasingly condemned pagan practices, including animal worship, shape-shifting beliefs, and spirit invocation. Figures like Saint Patrick driving the snakes, likely a metaphor for Druids from Ireland, and Saint Boniface felling the Donner oak sacred to the Germanic peoples, became archetypes of this cultural conquest. The association of the wolf with the devil became entrenched in medieval Christian iconography and literature. Weird little tidbit: one bizarre medieval belief involved wolfmen having a specific physical trait: a single, unbroken line of hair running down their spine. This lycanthropic stripe was supposedly a mark of their cursed nature, visible even in human form. How did you identify a potential werewolf? Check his back. It was a classic example of retrofitting pseudoscience or pseudo-theology onto folklore, creating a tangible, albeit absurd, proof of the hidden beast within. Imagine the awkwardness and terror of communal baths in villages gripped by werewolf panic. Scholars still scratch their heads, while the Church's motivation to suppress paganism is clear. The intensity and specificity of the wolf-werewolf connection in this early medieval phase is debated. Was it a deliberate, top-down strategy to target specific surviving warrior cults or shamanic traditions like echoes of the Lfnar, or was it a more organic process, where pre-existing folk fears about wolves and wilderness merged with Christian demonology? Did local clergy drive the panic based on genuine belief and local folklore, or was it centrally orchestrated doctrine? The interplay between official church policy, local superstition, and the lingering cultural memory of figures like the wolf coats remains complex and contested. The cleric pushes the figurine towards you. You will tell me what you know of these practices. Who carves these abominations? Who still whispers the old charms under the moon? Who among your neighbors bears the mark of the beast? His voice is low, insistent, terrifying. The warm memory of the shaman's transformative journey, the fierce pride of the Lfnar initiate, the terrifying power of the berserker, all are collapsing under the weight of this new, suffocating narrative. What was sacred is now satanic. What was power is now possession. What was a connection to the wild world is now a damning curse. The wolf skin, once a mantle of honor or a tool of the spirit, is becoming a shroud of suspicion, a symbol of everything the new order fears and must destroy. The seeds of the monstrous, night-stalking werewolf are being sown, not in the dark forests, but right here, in the cold, judgmental heart of the church. The chill you feel isn't just from the stone, it's the deep freeze settling over centuries of belief, transforming reverence into revulsion, and warriors into monsters. You look down at the crude wolf-man carving, its once resonant symbolism now twisted into something grotesque and terrifying. The howl echoing now isn't from the wilderness, it's the sound of history being rewritten in fire and fear. The Inquisitor's cold gaze, the accusing finger pointing at the crude wolf-man figurine, the suffocating smell of incense and stone dust, it all dissolves like a bad dream upon waking. But the fear it instilled doesn't fade, it simply changes shape. You gasp, drawing in a lungful of air that immediately makes you gag. Gone is the cloistered chill of the church chamber. You're standing on a muddy track in a village that reeks of despair. The year likely the mid-14th century, though the dread feels timeless. The air is thick with the cloying sweetness of decaying flowers left on graves, the acrid bite of vinegar-soaked rags the closest thing to disinfectant, the choking smoke of bonfires burning contaminated bedding, and beneath it all, the pervasive, nauseating stench of death. The Black Death is here. You stumble back, almost tripping over a bundle of foul-smelling rags dumped unceremoniously by the roadside. Houses stand with shutters tightly closed, crude red crosses daubed on doors marking homes visited by the Reaper. The few figures you see moving are hunched, faces obscured by cloth or the terrifying beaked masks of plague doctors, their glass eyes reflecting the gloom like a carrion bird's. The normal sounds of village life, children playing, blacksmiths hammering, gossip exchanged over fences are utterly absent. Silence hangs heavy, broken only by the occasional wail of grief from a shuttered window, the frantic ringing of a church bell tolling another death, or the distant, mournful howl of wolves. That sound slices through the oppressive quiet like a physical blow. It's not just one wolf, it sounds like a pack, circling closer. In normal times, wolves were a danger, but a known one. Livestock could be protected, hunters could track them. Now the village is crippled. Fields lie fallow, untended. Pigs and goats, once valuable assets, wander untethered or lie dead in their pens, easy pickings. Starving wolves, their natural prey diminished by the same ecological chaos the plague unleashed, are bolder. They slink into the edges of settlements under cover of darkness. They scavenge the dead left untended. They snatch the weak and the isolated. Their howls, once a natural part of the wilderness soundtrack, now sound like a chilling dirge for humanity itself. The boundary between the village and the wild, already frayed by neglect and death, feels terrifyingly thin. The wolves aren't just at the door, they feel inside the crumbling walls of human order. You duck into the relative shelter of a tavern doorway, the lucky boar, though luck seems a cruel joke now. Inside, the air is thick with smoke, cheap ale, and palpable terror. A small, huddled group sits near the dying fire, faces gaunt and eyes wide with a fear that goes beyond the plague. They speak in hushed, urgent whispers. Found young Peter this morning, a woman mutters, clutching a rosary so tightly her knuckles are white. Near the millstream, not touched by the pestilence, no torn apart. Ripped open like a hair. Wolf tracks all around, big as my hand. A grizzled woodsman shakes his head, his voice trembling slightly. Marta. But did you see the way it was done? Too neat. Too savage. Like something took its time. He leans closer, lowering his voice further. And the tracks they led towards the village, then vanished. Like they just turned to smoke. Another man, hollow-eyed, slams his tankard down. It weren't no wolf. Old man Heinrich saw it last full moon, loping over Gallows Hill. Tall as a man, but running on all fours. Fur black as pitch, eyes burning like coals. It looked right at him, he said. Smiled with teeth like daggers. His voice rises hysterically. The devil's loose. He sends his wolves to punish us for our sins. Or worse. He makes men into wolves. The word hangs in the smoky air, werewolf. It's no longer just the distant fear peddled by clerics against lingering paganism. It's become visceral, immediate. The plague is an incomprehensible horror, an invisible, unstoppable force. But wolves you can see. Wolves you can blame. And when the line between the natural wolf and the supernatural wolfman blurs in the terrified, grief-stricken imagination, the werewolf becomes the perfect vessel for collective terror. It embodies the violation of the village by the wild, the corruption of the human form by bestial savagery, the sense that the very order of God's creation has been overturned by the pestilence. The unseen plague germ is terrifying, but the idea of your neighbor, twisted by dark magic or demonic pact, prowling the night as a ravenous beast, that's a horror you can picture, a threat you can potentially hunt. Mainstream history nugget: the catastrophic depopulation and societal breakdown caused by the Black Death peaking in Europe 1347 to 1351 created fertile ground for extreme paranoia and scapegoating. Jews, lepers, foreigners, and witches were persecuted violently. The surge in werewolf trials and panics in the late Middle Ages and early modern period is directly linked to this atmosphere of profound fear, loss of social control, and the visible increase in aggressive wolf behavior due to the collapse of agriculture and animal husbandry. Real wolf attacks on vulnerable humans became tragically common, providing evidence for supernatural fears. Weird little tidbit: one bizarre remedy believed to ward off werewolves involved carrying acorns. Yes, acorns. The logic oak trees were sacred to Thor Donner in pagan times, symbolizing strength and protection. Even Christianized, the oak retained an aura of solidity and divine favor. Werewolves, as creatures of chaos and the wild or the devil, were supposedly repelled by this symbol of order and sacred strength. So, pockets full of acorns became a cheap, if utterly ineffective, medieval anti-werewolf charm. Imagine patting your pockets nervously on a moonlit night, hoping your acorn stash holds up against supernatural dentistry. Scholars still scratch their heads. How much of the werewolf panic was fueled by genuine belief in literal shapeshifters versus the psychological need for a tangible enemy in a time of unbearable chaos? Were people truly convinced men were turning into wolves, or was werewolf simply the terrifying label slapped onto the very real, very dangerous phenomenon of starving wolf packs driven to attack humans by the environmental catastrophe of the plague? Was it mass hysteria finding a folkloric outlet? Or did lingering shamanic demonic beliefs genuinely resurface under extreme stress? The interplay between ecological disaster, real animal behavior, pre-existing folklore, and desperate human psychology is incredibly complex and fiercely debated. A sudden, blood-curdling scream shatters the tense silence inside the tavern. It comes from outside, not far away. Panic erupts. People scramble to their feet, overturning benches. Someone grabs a fire poker, another a rusty scythe blade. They rush out into the muddy street, their fear momentarily overridden by a frantic, communal need to confront the horror. You follow, heart hammering against your ribs. The scream came from Widow Agnes's cottage, near the edge of the village, closest to the encroaching woods. The door hangs open, splintered as if by a tremendous force. Inside, a scene of carnage, a lamb slaughtered, blood spattered everywhere. But no sign of Widow Agnes. Only deep gouges in the dirt floor, leading out the back, towards the dark trilene. And amidst the blood and straw, clear as day, pressed into the mud, a single, disturbingly large, disturbingly human-looking footprint, barefoot, with unnaturally long, claw-like marks gouged deep at the tips. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. The woodsman points a shaking finger at the trilene, his face ashen. "See," he whispers, the word thick with dread. "Vanished. Like smoke. Or shadow." The line between wolf, man, and monster has not just blurred in the terrified mind, it feels like it's been ripped apart, leaving behind a bloody footprint on the threshold of the known world. The howl that answers from the forest sounds chillingly close, and this time, it carries a note that feels less like an animal's cry and more like a challenge. The chilling howl that answered the discovery of the bloody footprint hangs in the damp village air like a curse. The terror is no longer whispered, it's a palpable force, thick as the plague smoke. You stand among the huddled villagers outside Widow Agnes's shattered cottage, staring at that single, claw-tipped human footprint pressed into the mud, leading towards the ominous trilene. The grizzled woodsman's words vanished. Like smoke. Or shadow echo the worst fears. Reason, already stretched thin by pestilence and loss, snaps. The hunt isn't just for wolves anymore, it's for the thing that wears human skin by day and wolf's fury by night. The accusation, born of grief, superstition, and the desperate need for a target, finds its voice. Old man Heinrich saw it. He described it. It's got to be him. A finger, trembling with rage and fear, points towards the edge of the crowd. There stands Matthias, the charcoal burner. A solitary man, living on the fringes of the village deep in the woods, always a bit odd, quiet, smelling perpetually of smoke and earth. His eyes widen in bewildered horror as the mob's suspicion, sharpened by collective panic, turns upon him. The scene dissolves. The mud, the blood, the accusing shouts fade. You find yourself in a vastly different space, yet one just as suffused with dread. The air is cold and still, smelling of dust, old wood, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Tall, narrow windows let in grudging grey light, illuminating heavy wooden beams overhead and the imposing figure seated at a high bench. You're in a courtroom, but not one of modern justice. This is the 16th or early 17th century, the height of the European witch trials. The figure in the robes isn't just a judge, he's an instrument of God's wrath, tasked with purging the community of Satan's influence. Before him, slumped in chains, looking impossibly small and broken, is a man you vaguely recognize, not Matthias, but someone like him, another outsider, another easy target. The charge: lycanthropy. Being a werewolf. The trial unfolds like a grotesque parody of justice. The evidence presented isn't DNA or forensics, it's a terrifying tapestry woven from gossip, coerced confession, and the twisted logic of demonology. A farmer testifies, voice shaking, about losing 3 sheep in a single night, torn apart in a way no natural wolf could manage. A neighbor recounts seeing the accused, Pierre, walking near the woods on the night of a full moon, muttering to himself, his eyes shining unnaturally. The clincher, a local midwife, eager to deflect suspicion from herself, claims Pierre's mother was known for unnatural healing and was seen talking to a large, black dog, a clear familiar, and thus Pierre must be tainted by her diabolical pact. The judge listens with grim satisfaction. The logic is circular and unassailable within its own framework. Strange behavior, evidence of the devil. Unexplained livestock deaths, evidence of the werewolf. Accusations from others, proof of community consensus and divine revelation. Then comes the examination. Pierre is stripped to the waist. The courtroom holds its breath as a stern-faced physician or perhaps a self-proclaimed werewolf hunter steps forward. He's not looking for bite marks or scratches, he's searching for the devil's mark. This could be any unusual blemish, a mole, a birthmark, a patch of rough skin, even an old scar. Finding one and he will find one, he jabs it repeatedly with a long, wicked-looking silver pin. Why silver? Because folklore decreed it was pure, holy metal, anathema to demons and their creations. If Pierre flinches or cries out, proof he's human and feeling pain. If he doesn't, he react even worse. Proof the spot is insensate, a gift from Satan to seal the pact. Pierre, terrified and exhausted, flinches violently at the first jab. Aha! He feels it. He lies. The examiner declares. Or perhaps, under duress, Pierre numbs himself, dissociates, and barely reacts. See. The mark is confirmed. He feels nothing. Devil's work. The outcome is predetermined. The tools of discovery are instruments of condemnation. Mainstream history nugget: werewolf trials followed the same horrific legal and procedural frameworks as witch trials during the early modern period, c. 1450 to 1750. They relied heavily on denunciations, spectral evidence, dreams or visions, the search for the devil's mark, an insensate spot on the body, and confessions extracted under torture. Canon law and secular law increasingly intertwined, fueled by manuals like the infamous Malleus Maleficarum Hammer of Witches, which explicitly linked witchcraft and lycanthropy as facets of satanic heresy. Thousands were executed across Europe, particularly in France, Germany, Switzerland, and the Baltic regions. Weird little tidbit: forget silver bullets for a moment. One bizarre diagnostic tool involved suspected werewolf hair. It was believed that if you plucked a hair from a suspected werewolf and burned it, it would make a distinctive crackling sound like frying fat and emit a foul odor if they were truly cursed. If it burned quietly and smelled like normal hair, they might be innocent or just a very good pretender. Needless to say, the interpretation of the crackle and the stench was highly subjective and usually leaned towards condemnation. Imagine your life hanging on the acoustics of your burning body hair. The absurdity is chilling. Scholars still scratch their heads, while the framework of the trials is understood. The motivation behind the accused sometimes confessing to impossible crimes remains deeply puzzling. Under extreme torture, people would confess to anything. But some confessions were strangely detailed and given even before torture was applied. Why? Possible explanations include genuine belief. Did some individuals, influenced by folklore and societal hysteria, genuinely believe they were werewolves, perhaps during psychotic episodes or dissociative states? Cultural script. Did they internalize the stories so deeply that they confessed using the expected narrative, perhaps seeking notoriety or a way to make sense of their own violent impulses or mental anguish? Negotiation. Was a confession, even a fantastical one, seen as a path to a quicker death or clemency compared to prolonged torture? For denial, coercion and suggestion. How much were confessions shaped by leading questions from interrogators steeped in demonological theory? The line between tortured fabrication, psychotic delusion, and a desperate performance based on cultural expectations is incredibly thin and hotly debated. What went on in the minds of those who said, "Yes, I ran with the devil's pack under the moon"? Pierre, broken by the pin, the accusations, the weight of the crowd's hatred, finally slumps. A low, shuddering whisper escapes his lips, perhaps prompted by a leading question from the judge. I felt the change. The moon pulled at my skin. The hunger. The fur. It's enough. The judge nods grimly. The sentence is pronounced: death, usually by burning to purify the corrupted soul or hanging. The gavel falls with a sound like a coffin lid slamming shut. The chains clank as Pierre is dragged away, his fate sealed not by evidence of monstrous deeds, but by the monstrous machinery of fear, superstition, and a justice system designed to confirm the community's deepest nightmares. The real wolf, out in the dwindling forest, remains untouched. The monster hunted, captured, and condemned was always, tragically, human. The courtroom empties, leaving behind the smell of fear and the chilling resonance of a question that hangs heavier than the judge's sentence: how many Matthias S. and Pierre S. paid the ultimate price for humanity's terror of the beast within, and the shadows beyond the firelight? The grim pronouncement of the judge, the hollow clang of the prison door slamming shut on Pierre, the lingering smell of fear and cheap tallow candles in the courtroom, they fade, replaced by a deeper, more visceral darkness. You're not standing in judgment anymore, you're hunched on a cold, damp stone floor. The air is thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, stale urine, mold, and despair. Chains rattle nearby. Muffled sobs and incoherent mutterings drift through the heavy wooden door. You're in a prison cell, likely beneath some lord's castle or town hall, sometime in the late 16th or early 17th century. The figure chained to the opposite wall isn't Pierre, but another soul caught in the werewolf panic's net. His name, whispered by a board guard earlier, is Jean Grenier. And unlike Pierre, who seemed bewildered and broken, Jean is chatty. Terrifyingly, bizarrely chatty. He's young, maybe 14, painfully thin, with matted hair and eyes that dart around the cell like a trapped animal. But when he speaks, leaning conspiratorially towards you despite his chains, his voice is incongruously animated, almost boastful. Ah, another visitor. Come to hear about the hunt, he grins, revealing crooked teeth. Best night of my life, that was. Monsieur de la Forest, that's what he called himself, the master gave me the salve. Rub it on, see all over. Jean mimes vigorously rubbing his arms and chest. Stung like nettles at first, then, whoosh. Felt the bones cracken, the fur sproutin'. Sharp teeth, sharper claws. Felt powerful. He flexes his grimy fingers, pretending they're claws. Ran with the pack, we did. Through the moonlit woods, faster than the wind. The master led us, big black wolf with eyes like hellfire. We found a shepherdess near Saint Surin, pretty little thing. Jean's grin turns predatory, chilling. Didn't he even scream much? Tender. He smacks his lips, a grotesque parody of satisfaction. You recoil instinctively. This isn't the fearful confession extracted under torture, this is a lurid, detailed, almost enthusiastic narrative. Jean spins his tale with the fervor of a boy recounting a thrilling adventure, not a horrific crime. He describes transforming back at dawn, finding himself naked in a ditch, covered in mud and something dark and sticky. He claims he buried the shepherdess's clothes and little wooden cross. He mentions other hunts, other victims' children playing too far from home, lone travelers. His details are gruesomely specific, yet also wildly inconsistent. One moment he talks of running on 4 legs, the next of leaping over tall trees. He describes the devil's salve coming in a little pot, then says it was a black paste scraped from a tombstone. It's horrifying, yet undeniably surreal. Jean Grenier was a real boy, tried in southwestern France in 1603. His case wasn't unique. Across Europe, amidst the coerced confessions and tortured denials, emerged a strange subset of accused werewolves, those who volunteered their guilt, weaving elaborate, often boastful tales of transformation and murder. Why, what drove them to confess to monstrous, impossible crimes, often with unsettling relish? Mainstream history nugget, cases like Jean Grenier's France, 1603, Peter Stump Germany, 1589, and Thies of Kaltenbrunn Livonia, 1692 are well-documented instances of self-confessed werewolves. Their trials generated significant contemporary interest precisely because their narratives were so detailed and volunteered, often without extreme torture. These confessions were recorded by court clerks, physicians, and demonologists, providing chilling and bizarre primary sources for understanding the phenomenon. They often followed a formulaic pattern, packed with the devil, often a mysterious master, receiving an ointment or belt to enable transformation, running with a spectral wolf pack, and committing atrocities, usually against the young and vulnerable. Weird little tidbit: forget silver bullets or wolfsbane. One bizarre method confessed by some self-proclaimed werewolves involved transforming via somersaults. Seriously. Jean Grenier himself allegedly claimed that after applying the devil's salve, he needed to turn 3 somersaults over a specific stick or ditch to complete the transformation into a wolf. Other confessions mentioned rolling in dew under the full moon or jumping over specific types of trees. It's a ludicrous image: a naked man somersaulting frantically in a moonlit field, trying to turn into a wolf, yet it was presented and sometimes accepted as deadly serious ritual magic. It highlights the strange blend of genuine terror and folkloric absurdity woven into these narratives. Scholars still scratch their heads. The motivations behind these voluntary, detailed confessions remain one of the most perplexing aspects of the werewolf trials. Torture can explain coerced confessions, but what about those who confessed freely, even eagerly? Theories abound. Severe mental illness, psychosis, schizophrenia, or dissociative identity disorder could lead individuals to genuinely believe they transformed and committed the acts. The vivid narratives might reflect delusions or hallucinations. Intellectual disability suggestion: were some confessors highly suggestible, perhaps intellectually impaired, absorbing the prevailing fears and demonological scripts fed to them by interrogators or the community, and acting them out in their confessions? Pathological lying, pseudologia fantastica, a compulsion to create elaborate, self-aggrandizing fantasies, seeking attention or notoriety, even if it meant condemnation. The werewolf narrative provided a ready-made, dramatic script. Cultural absorption: did deeply ingrained folklore become so real to some individuals that they internalized the werewolf mythos, interpreting their own violent impulses, dreams, or dissociative episodes through its lens? Negotiation or performance: was a dramatic confession, playing into the interrogator's expectations, seen as a way to gain a kind of dark celebrity, control the narrative, or even hasten execution to escape a miserable existence? Or was it a performance born of profound alienation? Jean chuckles, a dry, rasping sound. They think they caught me 'cause I got sloppy. Nah. The master's salve, it went bad, see weak. Only turned me halfway. Got clumsy. Left tracks. He shrugs, the chains clinking. All right. Better than starving in the woods. Here, they have to feed me. He winks, a grotesque gesture in the gloom. The sheer, unsettling banality of his reasoning prison as an upgrade from homelessness hits you like a physical blow. Was he a monstrous killer, a deeply disturbed child spinning tales, a cunning manipulator playing the only card he had, or a vessel for a community's darkest fears, speaking them aloud in a voice tinged with madness and a horrifying kind of logic? The guard bangs on the door, yelling for silence. Jean ignores him, leaning closer again, his eyes gleaming in the dim light of the single, guttering oil lamp. Want to know the real secret? He whispers, his breath foul. The hunger, it never really goes away. Even now. Even without the salve. He licks his cracked lips, staring at you with an intensity that makes your blood run cold. Just takes different shapes. The line between confessed monster and tragic, broken human dissolves in the fetid air of the cell, leaving only a chilling echo of a hunger that defies easy explanation, and a confession that remains, centuries later, a deeply unsettling historical riddle. The key turns in the lock, but the mystery of Jean Greenier's grinning confession remains stubbornly, terrifyingly, unresolved. Jean Greenier's rasping whisper about the hunger lingers like a foul odor long after the heavy prison door clangs shut, leaving you alone in the metaphorical chill. The dank stone, the chains, the unsettling mix of boastfulness and despair dissolve. A new, sharply contrasting scent assaults your senses, antiseptic. Not the herbal poultices of a village healer, but something chemical, harsh, cutting through the air. You blink. The oppressive darkness is replaced by the sterile, unforgiving brightness of a long, tiled corridor. High windows let in gray, diffuse light. The air hums with a low thrum, maybe distant machinery, maybe the collective murmur of unseen activity. The year we leaped forward, landing firmly in the 19th century, the age of industry, empire, and the burgeoning science of the mind. You're no longer a prisoner or a villager, but perhaps a medical student, clad in a stiff white coat that feels alien against your skin, clutching a notebook. You stand outside a heavy oak door labeled Consultation Room 4, Dr. Moreau, or perhaps a Charcot, a Crepeline, a name resonant with the new authority of medicine. Gone are the inquisitor's robes, the judge's gavel, the crude pins searching for the devil's mark. The hunt for the beast has shifted ground. The battleground is no longer the courtroom or the village square, it's the human mind itself. And the quarry not Satan's werewolves, but something newly defined, lycanthropy. The term remains, stripped of its theological terror, repackaged as a mental disorder. You're ushered into the room. It's sparse, a desk, 2 chairs, shelves lined with thick medical tomes and specimen jars containing things best not examined too closely. Seated across from the stern-faced Dr. Moreau is a patient. Let us call him Henri. He's not in chains, but he's restrained by something less visible, more pervasive, fear and profound confusion. He's gaunt, eyes darting nervously, fingers picking incessantly at the fabric of his institutional trousers. He looks less like a monster and more like a man drowning in his own mind. Dr. Moreau gestures for you to observe. His voice is calm, clinical, devoid of the fire and brimstone fervor of the past. Patient exhibits persistent delusions centered on transformation, he states, consulting notes. Believes he physically changes into a wolf, primarily during lunar phases. Reports sensations of fur sprouting, teeth elongating, an overwhelming urge to howl and hunt. He looks up at Henri. Describe the feeling, Henri. They change. Henri flinches, wrapping his arms around himself as if suddenly cold. It starts, inside, he whispers, voice trembling. Like a cracking. In my bones. Then the skin, it prickles, burns. Like bristles pushing through. And the teeth. He runs his tongue over his incisors, a gesture of profound unease. They feel too big, too sharp. I can feel the points cutting my own lips. And the smells. He shudders. Everything is sharper, rank, meat, raw meat. I can smell it streets away. Makes my mouth water, makes me want to. He trails off, burying his face in his hands. I lock myself in the cellar. I chain my leg to the post. I know it's not real, sometimes, but the feeling. Doctor, the feeling is so strong. Dr. Moreau nods, making a note. Classical presentation, he murmurs to you. Somatic delusions, false bodily sensations. olfactory and gustatory hallucinations. The compulsion aligned with the perceived transformation. He turns back to Henri. And after the change passes, Henri looks up, eyes hollow. Exhaustion. Deep shame. Like waking from a terrible dream, but finding scratches on the door, mud on my hands, things I can't explain. His voice cracks. My wife, she left. Took the children. Said I was cursed. Or mad. The anguish is raw, human. This isn't Jean Greenier's boastful monstrosity, this is the quiet agony of a man whose own mind has become his prison, constructing a terrifying reality his senses insist is true. Mainstream history nugget. The 19th century witnessed the formalization of psychiatry as a medical discipline. Pioneers like Jean-Étienne Dominique Quirol in France and later Émile Crépelin in Germany began systematically categorizing mental disorders, moving away from supernatural explanations towards physiological and psychological models. Lycanthropy transitioned from a demonic affliction to a recognized, albeit rare, psychiatric syndrome, a specific type of monomania, fixation on one delusional idea or later, under Crépelin, a manifestation of dementia praecox, early term for schizophrenia or severe melancholia, depression with psychotic features. Case studies like Henry's became the new evidence, documented in medical journals. Weird little tidbit. The 19th century also saw a bizarre intersection of medicine and folklore with the concept of clinical vampirism, later termed Renfield's syndrome. While distinct from lycanthropy, it shared the theme of monstrous transformation delusions. Some physicians documented patients believing they needed to consume blood to survive, exhibiting sensitivity to light, and claiming nocturnal transformations. This highlights how emerging psychiatry grappled with age-old folkloric archetypes, attempting to map them onto new diagnostic frameworks. Imagine the diagnostic confusion. Does the patient crave raw meat and howl lycanthrope? Do they crave blood and avoid sunlight, vampire? Do both refer to theology? They didn't actually say that. Probably. Scholars still scratch their heads. While the medicalization of lycanthropy was a step away from the witch hunts, it presents its own profound questions. How much did cultural expectations shape the presentation of the delusion? Did patients in wolf-rich Europe become wolves, while in other cultures they transformed into tigers, hyenas, or other locally feared predators? Was the specific content of the delusion the sensations of fur, fangs, the lunar connection influenced by the pervasive werewolf folklore surrounding them, or does the human brain, under severe psychotic stress, naturally generate similar archetypal beast within imagery? The line between a universal psychological phenomenon expressed through local folklore, and a delusion created by cultural exposure, remains intensely debated by psychiatrists, anthropologists, and historians of medicine. Dr. Morrow closes his notebook with a definitive snap. Treatment involves addressing the underlying melancholia or nervous exhaustion, he states, the diagnosis delivered like a verdict. Hydropathy, perhaps. Or a course of sedatives, potassium bromide to calm the nervous excitability. Rest, regular meals, moral therapy, structured occupation. The solutions sound mundane, almost pathetically inadequate against the visceral terror Henri describes. You look at Henri. He nods numbly, accepting the doctor's authority, yet the fear still swims in his eyes. The chains he described were metaphorical, but no less real. He wasn't condemned to burn at the stake, he was condemned to the quieter, more protracted sentence of being labeled mad, confined to an asylum's echoing wards, treated with methods that often ranged from the useless to the barbaric. The wolf he feared wasn't driven out by holy water or silver, it was reclassified, pathologized, locked within the newly mapped, but still largely uncharted, territory of the diseased mind. The hunger Jean spoke of hadn't vanished, it had simply changed its name, from demonic possession to psychotic delusion. As you follow the orderly leading Henri away, the sharp smell of antiseptic feels less like cleanliness and more like an attempt to scrub away the lingering, unsettling question: is a monster defined by the shackles of superstition, or by the terrifying landscapes of a fractured mind? The footprints left now aren't in blood or mud, but in the cold, clinical pages of a medical journal. The sterile corridor, Dr. Moreau's clinical pronouncements, and Henri's haunted eyes fade like the last notes of a somber hymn. A new warmth envelopes you, carrying a rich tapestry of scents: wood smoke, roasting chestnuts, spilled ale, damp wool drying by the hearth, and the earthy tang of pipe tobacco. The harsh institutional light softens into the warm, flickering glow of oil lamps and a roaring fire. You're no longer in an asylum corridor, but squeezed into a corner bench of a bustling country inn somewhere deep in rural Europe, maybe the French Jura, the Carpathian foothills, or the misty Scottish Highlands. The year is fluid, perhaps the late 19th or early 20th century, a time when medicine marched forward, but old tales still thrived in the cracks between villages and the shadows of the hearth. The air thrums with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of tankards. The figure regaling the crowd near the fire isn't a doctor or a judge, but a storyteller, an elder with a face like a weathered apple and eyes that hold the glint of countless moons. He taps his pipe against the stone hearth, sending sparks dancing, and leans forward, his voice a low, captivating rumble that cuts through the jovial noise. "Ah, but friends," he says, a knowing smile playing on his lips, "you think the loup-garou is the only shadow that walks under the hunter's moon? Oh no. The wolf's skin is worn differently, depending on the soil it treads." He begins to weave a tapestry of terror and wonder, stitched together from the diverse threads of European folklore. You lean in, your medical notebook forgotten, replaced by the age-old comfort of a shared story in the firelight. France, here, the werewolf often wears a cloak of tragic elegance. Meet the loup-garou. His curse might stem from a family secret, a broken vow, or a fateful encounter on a Friday night. Transformation isn't always monstrous, sometimes it's a silent, melancholic wandering. He might be compelled to count grains of spilled salt or peas scattered on the church path, a bizarre, almost pitiful compulsion born of his cursed state. His nemesis not just silver, but often a specific ritual, calling his human name 3 times, or the touch of a pure maiden's hand. He's less a ravening beast and more a damned soul caught between worlds, a figure of pity as much as fear. The storyteller describes one such tale: a nobleman, cursed for hunting on sacred ground, seen silently padding through his own moonlit vineyards, his wolf eyes filled with human sorrow. The Balkans, here, the air thickens. The storyteller lowers his voice. Beyond the forests of Wallachia and Transylvania, the Varkalak, or Prakalasi, prowls. This creature blurs the lines terrifyingly. It might be a werewolf, yes, but its shadow overlaps deeply with the region's other infamous night stalker, the vampire. The Varkalak is often described as a sorcerer who transforms not just to hunt the living, but to guard the dead, specifically, to battle other vampires or malevolent spirits threatening the village from the graveyard. It consumes not just flesh, but sometimes the moon or the sun, causing eclipses, a cosmic hunger reflecting its liminal nature. Its connection to the undead is intimate, terrifying. Is it the vampire's fierce cousin, its sworn enemy, or something else entirely? The storyteller recounts whispers of shapeshifters seen digging at graves under the full moon, not to devour corpses, but to confront something worse rising from within. Alpine regions, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, the mood shifts again. The storyteller chuckles, a dry, rasping sound. Ah, but in the high valleys, under the shadow of the peaks, they have the wolf's Siegen, the wolf's blessing more like the wolf's appetite. Here, the werewolf legend often takes a surprisingly domestic turn. Tales abound of individuals, usually men, cursed not with bloodlust, but with an insatiable craving for butter or milk in their wolf form. The butter wolf or milch wolf might sneak into dairies or pantries, gorging itself on churns and bowls, leaving behind greasy paw prints and empty larders, but rarely harming people. It's a thief, not a killer. The curse might stem from laziness, breaking Lenten fasts with dairy, or offending a woodland spirit. The antidote often as simple as a specific prayer wolfsegen recited by a local cunning person, or discovering the werewolf's hidden human clothes and burning them. The image of a wolf guiltily licking stolen butter off its paws adds a layer of dark, absurd humor to the terror. Mainstream history nugget: the study of comparative folklore exploded in the 19th century with figures like the Brothers Grimm Germany, Peter Christen Asbjørnsen and Jørgen Moe Norway, and Alexander Afanasiev Russia. Their collections documented vast regional variations in supernatural beings, including werewolves. These variations weren't random, they reflected local environments, wolf presence behavior, dominant religions, Catholic versus Orthodox influences on the curse, historical traumas, Tartar invasions influencing Balkan lore, and even local economies, dairy-centric alpine tales. Folklorists mapped these archetypes of the werewolf, showing how a core concept adapted to specific cultural landscapes. Weird little tidbit: building on the alpine butter obsession, one peculiar German-Swiss folk belief involved werewolves stealing specifically from unbaptized children. It was thought that the milk or butter intended for a baby not yet christened held a special, vulnerable energy that attracted the thieving milch wolf. Protecting your dairy wasn't just about property, it was about protecting the spiritual well-being of your newborn. This involved hanging specific herbs like mistletoe or rowan over the cradle and pantry, or placing iron nails in the butter churn. Forget silver bullets, safeguarding your breakfast required holy water and cold iron. Scholars still scratch their heads. One major puzzle is the relationship between werewolves and vampires in Balkan folklore. The lines are incredibly blurry. Some sources treat them as distinct but related entities. Sorcerers might become either. Others describe beings that start as Varkalak, shape-shifting spirit eaters, and evolve into vampires after death. Was the Varkalak a precursor, a guardian, or a rival predator in the same supernatural ecosystem? Did the vampire myth absorb werewolf traits, or vice versa? The lack of clear, consistent distinctions in the original folk beliefs continues to fuel academic debate about the origins and interconnectedness of these two iconic monsters in Eastern Europe. Were they branches of the same rotten tree, or distinct seeds planted in the same blood-soaked soil? The storyteller pauses to take a long draught from his tankard. The fire crackles. Around you, faces are wrapped, some amused by the butter wolf, others pale at the mention of the grave-digging Varkalak. So, you see, he continues, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, the wolf in the man takes many shapes. Fierce protector or tragic wanderer, grave guardian or pantry raider, feared monster or... He nods towards a blushing young dairymaid listening intently. Just a thief with a taste for your best cream. Laughter ripples through the inn, momentarily dispelling the shadows. But beneath the warmth and the humor, the older stories linger. The sorrowful French nobleman, the shadow wrestling with the undead in Balkan graveyards. The werewolf isn't a single monster, it's 1,000 faces reflected in the dark windows of 1,000 villages, shaped by the land, the history, and the fears of the people who whisper its name. The firelight casts long, dancing shadows on the walls, shapes that seem to twist and flow, hinting at forms far older and stranger than any simple wolf. The embers glow like watchful eyes in the dark, reminding you that the story, like the creature itself, has countless skins yet to shed. The path through the moonlit forest of folklore has many forks, each leading to a different kind of howl. The warm fog of the country inn, the earthy chuckles at the butter wolf, the chilling whispers of Balkan Varkalak, they dissolve like pipe smoke caught in a sudden draught. The scent shifts abruptly, beeswax candles, fine parchment, expensive perfume laced with a hint of opium, and the dry, slightly metallic smell of old books. The rustic roar fades to a murmur of cultured voices, speaking French, English, perhaps German. You're no longer on a rough bench by the hearth, but perched on the edge of a plush velvet chaise longue in an opulent salon. Gilded mirrors reflect the soft light of candelabras. Heavy damask curtains drape tall windows overlooking a moonlit, manicured garden. The year early 19th century, the Romantic era. The air thrums not with peasant fear, but with intellectual excitement and a cultivated taste for the macabre. You're surrounded by poets, novelists, artists, the arbiters of a new cultural consciousness. The figure holding court isn't a village elder, but a pale, intense man with feverish eyes, perhaps Lord Byron himself, or one of his circle. He swirls a glass of claret, his voice low, hypnotic. The peasant sees a beast, a demon, a thief of butter. How quaint, he scoffs, a languid wave dismissing centuries of folklore. But what if the beast is not merely a monster? What if it is a man of sensibility, cursed, a soul torn between the drawing room and the abyss? He leans forward, the candlelight carving dramatic shadows on his face. That, my friends, is true terror. True tragedy. That is the stuff of art. The shift is seismic. The werewolf, once a figure of village dread or theological condemnation, is being snatched from the muddy lanes and smoky taverns and meticulously reforged in the fires of romanticism and Gothic fiction. Gone is the coarse, often pathetic creature of folklore, the butter thief, the melancholy wanderer, the raving peasant. In its place rises a new archetype, the tortured aristocrat, the Byronic werewolf. Think of John Polidori's 1819 tale, The Vampire. Though focused on vampires, it set the template. Soon after, his own fragment, The Werewolf, or works like Catherine Crowe's The Story of a Werewolf 1846, fully embrace the concept. The narrative crystallizes a cultured, often noble protagonist, sensitive, intelligent, perhaps broodingly handsome. He carries a hereditary curse or suffers a fateful bite, not from a common wolf, but from something ancient, primal, often linked to a gypsy's prophecy or a family secret buried in a crumbling ancestral crypt. The transformation isn't just physical agony, it's profound psychological torment. He loathes the beast within, yet is helpless against its periodic eruptions. His affliction isolates him, forcing him to hide his true nature from a society that would recoil in horror. He becomes a tragic outcast, wrestling with monstrous urges while retaining his human intellect and capacity for suffering. The full moon becomes less a simple trigger and more a symbol of his inescapable, cyclical damnation. The setting shifts accordingly. We're no longer in muddy villages or plague-stricken towns, but in gloomy manor houses on desolate moors, ancient forests echoing with unseen menace, decaying European castles shrouded in mist. Atmosphere is everything: howling winds, skeletal trees clawing at a livid moon, the oppressive weight of ancestral sin. The horror stems less from gore, though it might be present, and more from the psychological torment, the dread of the impending change, the guilt after the kill, the unbearable loneliness of carrying such a secret. The werewolf becomes a vehicle to explore the duality of man, the civilized veneer versus the savage ID, the struggle between reason and primal instinct, the burden of inherited sin or uncontrollable desire. He is Frankenstein's monster with aristocratic breeding and a lunar alarm clock. Mainstream history nugget: the Gothic literary movement, late 18th, early 19th century, spearheaded by authors like Anne Radcliffe, Matthew Lewis, and later embraced by romantics like Byron, Shelley, and Polidori, revolutionized horror. It shifted focus from external supernatural threats, ghosts, demons, to internal psychological landscapes, explored themes of isolation, madness, inherited curses, and the sublime terror of nature and the unknown. The werewolf, as reimagined by these writers, became a perfect Gothic protagonist villain, embodying these core themes far more effectively than the often simplistic folkloric versions. This literary reinvention laid the groundwork for the modern cinematic werewolf. Weird little tidbit: how did you depict a werewolf transformation on the page before special effects? Early Gothic writers got creative. George W. M. Reynolds, in his penny dreadful Wagner the Werewolf 1846-47, described the transformation with bizarre, almost psychedelic detail: bones cracking and reforming, skin rippling like water, fur sprouting with audible popping sounds like corn kernels, accompanied by swirling mists and flashes of hellfire. It was visceral, grotesque, and wildly imaginative, trying to convey the physical horror through words alone. Imagine reading that by flickering candlelight. It paved the way for the later, more familiar cinematic metamorphoses. Scholars still scratch their heads: how much did this romantic Gothic reinvention erase the original folkloric werewolf? Was the tortured aristocrat a genuine evolution, or a cultural appropriation that sanitized and gentrified a creature born from peasant fears and societal anxieties? Folkloric werewolves were often social outcasts before transformation: the poor, the mentally ill, the solitary. The Gothic version often made them aristocrats, shifting the focus from societal neglect to individual, often inherited, tragedy. Did this literary glamorization lose the raw, primal connection to wilderness, poverty, and social fear that birthed the legend, or did it simply adapt the myth for a new, literate audience and their preoccupations? The debate continues about what was gained and what was lost in the translation from folktale to Gothic novel. A young woman in a diaphanous gown shivers dramatically, clutching a lace handkerchief. But the curse, she breathes. Is there no redemption, no cure? The Byronic figure smiles faintly, a glint of melancholy in his eyes. Ah, my dear. Sometimes the only cure is death. A silver bullet, perhaps, wielded by a loved one. A final release from the torment. He pauses, letting the tragic weight settle. Or perhaps, the curse is the price of a depth of feeling, a connection to the wild heart of the world that polite society has forgotten. The beast is not just a destroyer, it is the untamed truth we all carry, suppressed beneath our waistcoats and corsets. The salon sighs, enthralled by the elegant misery. The howl outside the manor window, in this refined setting, isn't just a sound of animal hunger, it's a mournful aria of existential dread, a siren song of the savage beauty lurking beneath the surface of enlightenment, reason, and romantic sentiment. The flickering candlelight casts long, distorted shadows that seem to twist and flow, not just on the walls, but within the very souls of the enraptured listeners. The literary werewolf is born no longer merely a monster to be feared, but a dark mirror held up to humanity's own divided nature, a creature of pathos and terror destined to stalk the pages of novels, and soon, the flickering screens of a new century. The path ahead is paved not with muddy footprints, but with ink and celluloid, leading deeper into the forest of the modern imagination. The mournful sigh of the romantic salon, the tragic silhouette of the Byronic werewolf against a painted moon, dissolves into the electric hum of the modern world. The scent of beeswax and claret is replaced by the ozone tang of electronics, stale popcorn, and the faint, plasticky smell of action figures. The plush velvet gives way to the worn fabric of a cinema seat, the glow of a laptop screen, or the immersive darkness of a VR headset. The year is now. Or any time in the last century, really. You're no longer a rapt listener in a drawing room, you're a consumer, bathed in the flickering light of pop culture. And the werewolf, it's everywhere. Not just a monster lurking in gothic novels, but a multimedia icon, shape-shifting as rapidly as its cinematic counterparts. The journey starts with a flicker of celluloid. 1941 Universal Studios. Lon Chaney Jr. stumbles through a foggy Welsh moor in The Wolf Man. Larry Talbot isn't a brooding aristocrat by birth, but he inherits the Gothic curse via gypsy prophecy and a silver-headed cane shaped like a wolf. Chaney's portrayal cemented the modern template, the reluctant victim, the agonizing transformation thanks to pioneering makeup artist Jack Pierce's yak hair and latex, the tragic pursuit by torch-wielding villagers, and the iconic vulnerability to silver. This wasn't high Gothic tragedy, but it was potent, primal cinema. The howl echoing through the pines became synonymous with horror. The curse felt tangible, the rules clear: full moon, pentagram, silver bullet. Fast forward. The flickering black and white gives way to vibrant, gory color. 1981 London. Rick Baker's groundbreaking, Oscar-winning practical effects in An American Werewolf in London ripped the transformation onto the screen with unprecedented, visceral horror. Bones snap, skin stretches and tears, muscles bubble beneath the surface. It's a masterpiece of biological nightmare. David Kessler's torment isn't just psychological, it's a screaming, physical apocalypse witnessed in agonizing real time. The terror is raw, the humor jet black, the beast utterly feral. This werewolf isn't tragic, it's a force of nature unleashed, a reminder of the raw, animal savagery beneath the surface, now rendered in stomach-churning detail. But the beast doesn't stay solely terrifying. Pop culture loves an anti-hero. Enter Marvel Comics. Logan. Wolverine. Sure, he's more feral man with claws than classic lycanthrope, but he embodies the core struggle, the barely contained animal rage, the healing factor as a curse outliving loved ones, the struggle for control. He's gruff, morally grey, fiercely protective, and incredibly popular. He paved the way for werewolves who weren't just monsters or victims, but protagonists wrestling with their nature, sometimes even embracing it for a righteous cause. Think Underworld's Lucian, leading a werewolf rebellion, or Teen Wolf's Scott McCall, navigating lycanthropy as an awkward metaphor for adolescence, or the conflicted pack members in MTV's Teen Wolf series. The curse becomes a source of power, community, the pack, and identity, albeit a dangerous one. The monstrous other becomes relatable, even aspirational, channeling the beast for strength, loyalty, and enhanced senses. Mainstream history nugget: the evolution of the werewolf in film is a technological and narrative journey. Universal's classic monsters defined the archetype in the Golden Age. The 70s-80s saw a gory renaissance with practical effects masters like Rick Baker American Werewolf and Rob Bottin The Howling pushing the boundaries of on-screen transformation. The 2000s brought CGI, allowing for more dynamic creatures but often losing the tactile horror, though Ginger Snaps cleverly used it for body horror metaphor. Narratively, the shift from pure victim monster Universal to complex anti-hero team member Marvel influence, Underworld, Twilight Pax reflects changing audience tastes and a desire for more nuanced monstrous protagonists. Weird little tidbit: forget silver bullets, the modern werewolf faces stranger threats. In the Monster High franchise, werewolf character Claudine Wolf is allergic to silver thread. A single strand woven into her fabulous outfit could trigger a sneezing fit or itchy rash. It's a playful, fashion-conscious twist on the old vulnerability, reflecting how the myth adapts to even the most whimsical settings. Imagine a high-stakes fashion show where the villain sabotages a werewolf designer-esque gown with hidden silver trim. Monster drama. Scholars still scratch their heads: why has the werewolf remained so enduringly popular? evolving far beyond its folkloric and Gothic roots. What cultural needs does it fulfill now? The beast within 2.0, does it still represent repressed primal urges, but now in a world of social media pressure, emotional suppression, and societal alienation? Is the transformation a fantasy of unleashing pent-up rage or breaking free from constraints, identity and belonging? Does the pack dynamic resonate in an increasingly fragmented world, offering a metaphor for chosen family, subcultures, or online communities, even with the inherent dangers of groupthink and hierarchy? Body horror and transformation. Does the visceral physical change speak to anxieties about puberty, illness, aging, or the mutability of identity in a fluid world? Is it a safe way to explore the terror and fascination of our own physicality? The anti-hero appeal. Does the struggle for control, the moral ambiguity, and the potential for power mirror contemporary fascination with complex, flawed protagonists? Is the werewolf the ultimate damaged but powerful archetype? Nostalgia and reinvention. Is it simply the comfort of a known monster, endlessly repackaged with new effects and twists for new generations? The line between what the werewolf meant, demonic threat, tragic curse, social outcast, and what it means now, power fantasy, identity metaphor, action hero, is constantly shifting sand. Academics in media studies, cultural anthropology, and psychology are still unpacking the beast's persistent appeal in the digital age. You pause the game The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim. You were just howling at the moon as a werewolf, savaging bandits. You take off the headphones. The silence is sudden. Outside your window, the city lights glow, a far cry from the moors or the Gothic manor. Yet, the echo of the howl remains, not from the game, but from somewhere deeper. The werewolf endures because it's endlessly adaptable. It can be a terrifying reminder of primal chaos, a tragic figure wrestling with an unwanted gift, a symbol of untamed power and loyalty, or just a really cool monster to play in a video game. It reflects our changing fears, desires, and understandings of ourselves, the animal, the human, the monstrous, and the line, ever blurry, that we pretend separates them. The moonlight might be drowned by streetlights now, but the wolf still stirs within the stories we consume, a primal shadow stretching long across the pixelated landscape of the modern myth. The next chapter isn't written in folklore or Gothic script, it's coded in algorithms, rendered in polygons, and streamed to millions. The beast has learned to howl in a whole new key. The pixelated moonlight of the game world fades, leaving the soft, familiar glow of your own lamp, or perhaps the ambient light from a street lamp filtering through the curtains. The digital howl, the roar of CGI beasts, the adrenaline rush of the virtual hunt, they dissolve into the quiet hum of the night. You stretch, perhaps feeling a phantom ache in limbs that Haven T actually sprinted through ancient forests or grappled with inner demons. The journey, from the flickering Ice Age campfire to the flickering screens of the 21st century, feels vast, almost dizzying. Yet, here you are, curled in your modern cocoon, the scent of popcorn replaced by laundry detergent or sleep tea, the visceral terror and Gothic pathos settling into a deep, resonant hum within you. Why does this creature, this idea of the human entwined with the wolf, refuse to loosen its grip on our imagination, century after tumultuous century? Why does the howl still echo in the silence of our own minds? The answer, perhaps, lies not out there in the forests or on the silver screen, but in here. Look inward. Feel the steady drum of your own heartbeat thump, thump thump, thump, thump thump. It's the same rhythm the shaman used to ride into the spirit world, the same pulse that quickened in the berserker's chest before the fury erupted. It's the primal metronome beneath the surface of your civilized thoughts. We carry the echo of that ancient campfire within our very biology. Our brains are wired for fight or flight responses honed over millennia, surges of adrenaline, hyper-awareness, the capacity for explosive action that feels, in moments of extreme stress or passion, almost superhuman. The wolf isn't just a symbol out there, it's a neural pathway, a hormonal cascade, a deep-seated program for survival that thrums beneath the thin veneer of social media feeds and supermarket queues. The werewolf myth externalizes that internal wildness, gives it fur and fangs, lets us confront the exhilarating and terrifying power of our own untamed core. It asks the uncomfortable question, how thin is the layer of civilization separating you from the beast? But it's more than just biology. It's about belonging. Remember the Ulfnar, moving as one silent, lethal unit, the fierce loyalty of the pack that resonates deeply in a world that can feel increasingly fragmented, isolating. Online tribes, fandoms, chosen families, we crave that sense of unbreakable connection, the certainty that the pack has your back. The werewolf pack, whether depicted as a terrifying horde or a found family struggling with their curse, think Teen Wolf, taps into this fundamental human need. It offers a potent fantasy of belonging, of shared strength and purpose, even if the price is sharing a monstrous secret. It speaks to the primal comfort of the tribe, the safety of the circle against the encroaching darkness, yet, it also warns of the dangers, the loss of individuality, the pack mentality that can turn savage, the burden of shared secrets. The werewolf myth holds up a mirror to our deepest social desires and fears. And then there's the fear. Not just fear of claws in the dark, but fear of the unknown within ourselves and the world. The shaman sought to understand the wilderness by becoming part of it. The medieval villager projected their terror of plague and social collapse onto the shape-shifting predator. We grapple with anxieties about technology, climate change, pandemics, the erosion of truth, vast, complex threats that feel monstrous and uncontrollable. The werewolf, a creature born of transformation and violation of natural order, becomes a vessel for these amorphous modern fears. It embodies the terror of losing control of our bodies, our minds, our world, the horror of the familiar becoming monstrous, your neighbor, your reflection, and the pervasive dread of forces beyond our comprehension or control. Chasing the werewolf through story, even now, is a way to chase our own shadows, to name the nameless dreads that stalk the edges of our awareness. Mainstream history nugget. Neuroscientific research increasingly explores the link between ancient survival mechanisms and modern storytelling. Our brains respond powerfully to narratives involving predators, threats, and survival struggles because they activate deep-seated neural pathways evolved for vigilance and pattern recognition. Stories featuring monsters like werewolves provide a safe, controlled environment to experience and process primal fears, releasing tension, catharsis, and potentially strengthening psychological resilience. It's why horror, despite its unsettling nature, can be oddly comforting and even beneficial. Weird little tidbit: ever heard of clinical lycanthropy in the modern DSM Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders? It's incredibly rare, but it exists. It's classified as a subtype of delusional misidentification syndrome. Sufferers genuinely believe they are transforming, or have transformed, into a wolf or other animal. They might report sensations of fur, fangs, or heightened senses, and behave accordingly. It's a stark, heartbreaking reminder that the line between powerful myth and profound psychological disturbance can tragically thin for some. It underscores the potent, sometimes overwhelming, power of the archetype embedded in our cultural psyche. Scholars still scratch their heads. The enduring adaptability of the werewolf myth is its own fascinating puzzle. Why can it seamlessly morph from tragic gothic hero the wolf man to feral body horror American werewolf to sexy teen drama Twilight to complex anti-hero underworld to action figure Skyrim and even absurd comedy werewolves? Within what core element allows it to be stretched so thin without breaking? Is there an irreducible wolfness at its heart that remains recognizable through all the reinventions, or is it simply a blank slate, a monster suit so basic human and animal and transformation that it can be projected onto endlessly. Historians of folklore, literature, and media are constantly analyzing what makes this particular monster so uniquely plastic and perpetually relevant across wildly different contexts and genres. You sink deeper into your pillow, the day's modern anxieties momentarily soothed, replaced by the ancient, resonant echoes of the journey. The shaman's drumbeat, the berserker's roar, the terrified villager's cry, the tragic howl of the gothic outcast, the digital snarl of the modern monster, they blend into a single, complex song of what it means to be human. The werewolf isn't just a monster, it's a mirror. It reflects our primal inheritance, our desperate need for connection, our profound fear of the dark both outside and within. It's the shadow we cast under the moon, the wildness we try to tame but never quite extinguish. And perhaps, on a night like this, listening to its ancient story retold, it's also a reminder that within that wildness lies a deep, resonant power, a connection to something older and more fundamental than the concrete and glass world outside your window. The howl isn't just a sound of fear, it's the sound of the untamed pulse of life itself, echoing down the long corridors of time, whispering that the wild heart still beats, strong and deep, beneath the skin of the civilized world. It's a lullaby written in moonlight and blood, reminding you that you are, and always will be, a creature woven from both the hearth and the howling dark. The last ember of the story glows softly now, like a distant star seen through drowsy eyelids. The drumbeat slows, becomes the gentle thud of your own heart against the pillow. The howl softens, melts into the sigh of wind through leaves outside, or the rhythmic whisper of a fan, a modern lullaby. Feel the weight of centuries, not as a burden, but as a deep, warm blanket settling over you. The shaman's fire, the Viking's chill, the villager's fear, the poet's sigh, they're all just layers of the same vast, comforting night that holds you now. The wolf isn't prowling, it's curled at the foot of your awareness, a familiar shadow resting, guarding the threshold between waking and dreaming. That primal pulse you felt, it's still there, but it's the slow, steady tide of your breath, pulling you deeper, deeper. The forest outside your window is just trees. The moonlight on the floor is just light. The only transformation happening is the gentle melting of thought into feeling, of awareness into the soft, warm embrace of the quiet dark. The wild heart hasn't vanished, it's simply slowed to match the rhythm of sleep, beating in time with the turning earth. The ancient fear has dissolved, leaving only the profound safety of the here and now. The story isn't an ending, it's an invitation. Let go of the hunt, the howl, the history. Drift on the quiet river of your own breath. The moon watches, gentle and silent. The world holds its breath. You are safe. You are still. You are, drifting, down, into the warm, velvet darkness where stories begin and end, and where the only sound is the peaceful silence of a soul at rest. Let the quiet carry you away.